Before I begin, hear this clearly. The thumbnail phrases, "no way out," "she cooked him," and "finished" are exactly the energy you are about to hear in this video. And while I won't impersonate anyone, the voice, rhythm, and fire you're going to feel are inspired by the public style you already recognize. Now, listen closely, because this is the moment the noise stops and the truth steps into the room. They thought volume was power. They thought repetition was control. They thought if they talked long enough, if they moved fast enough, the facts would trip over themselves and fall. But facts don't stumble. Facts stand. And when the lights hit that room and the cameras locked in, it wasn't about who could speak the loudest anymore. It was about who could speak the clearest. And for one man in that moment, there was nowhere left to hide. People always ask me, what was he really trying to argue? And the answer is simple: confusion. He wanted a fog so thick that nobody could see straight. His strategy wasn't persuasion. His strategy was distraction. Jump from point to point, shift the frame, twist the timeline, say the same sentence 3 different ways and hope one of them sticks. But there's a problem with chaos. It collapses under structure. Here's what nobody expected. The real battle that day wasn't between 2 people. It was between logic and noise. And logic is patient. Logic waits for its moment. Logic lets the other side burn out their energy. And when the room gets quiet, logic walks to the center and clears its throat. Let me take you back to the atmosphere. You could almost feel the tension collecting in the corners, the kind of silence that hums. People leaning forward, not even blinking, pens hovering above paper. And he kept talking, and talking, and talking. He believed the floor was still his. He believed if he kept moving the goalpost, no one would notice the game had already ended. But then, the calm voice cut through the room. Not raised, not rushed, just direct. The kind of tone that tells you a storm is coming, not because of thunder, but because the air has shifted. Questions started simple, clean, surgical, dates, statements, contradictions. No anger, no theatrics, just connective tissue between what he said and what he didn't want remembered. Here's the twist that shook everyone. He knew his argument and still walked straight into the trap. Because it wasn't a trap of aggression, it was a trap of consistency. You either match your own words or you expose yourself. You see, a lot of people confuse intelligence with volume, but real power is precision. You don't need 10 sentences if one will do. And when that one sentence lands perfectly, it echoes louder than any rant ever could. The room shifted again, subtle but sharp. You can always tell. It's the moment when even your opponent stops talking, when they blink a little more often, when their hands move but their confidence doesn't move with them. And that's when the law entered the conversation. Not as a threat, not as a flex, but as a mirror. Section by section, principle by principle. The same rules he tried to bend were now being held up, right in front of him. And no matter how you feel about politics, no matter what side you're on, there is one universal truth. When the law is quoted accurately, it doesn't take sides. It just takes space. Now, here's something most people missed in real time. The moment he realized he had overplayed his hand didn't come when he was challenged. It came when he wasn't interrupted. Silence was the loudest response, the kind of silence that forces you to hear yourself for the first time. Nadie lo esperaba, but the energy completely flipped. See, when you go in expecting a fight, you prepare for punches. What you don't prepare for is stillness. You don't prepare for clarity. You don't prepare for someone to calmly walk you through your own contradictions like they're reading directions. And the more he tried to climb out of it, the deeper it looked. This wasn't just debate anymore. This was exposure. Not emotional, not messy, just painfully clear. One simple thread was pulled, and the whole argument unraveled. Every excuse now led back to the same wall. Every deflection circled back to the same fact. And facts, my friend, are undefeated in the long run. Now imagine this. Millions of people watching, some cheering, some uncomfortable, some in pure shock, and a few realizing for the very first time that charisma without structure is just noise wearing a nice suit. Because here's the real secret no one wants to talk about. Confidence comes from preparation, and preparation always shows. He came with talking points. She came with receipts. He came with opinions. She came with timelines. And timelines, when laid out correctly, don't bend for anyone. Let that sink in. The reason that moment went viral isn't because of disrespect. It isn't because of humiliation. It isn't even because of politics. It went viral because it reminded people of something they miss in everyday life: truth standing up to chaos and winning without raising its voice. Another turn nobody saw coming. The crowd didn't erupt. No big reaction, no applause, just wide eyes. That's the kind of impact that lasts, quiet shock, the kind that makes people go back and rewatch again. You could see it in his face, not anger, something else, the realization that the narrative he planned was no longer his. And the camera didn't need to move. The camera didn't need to zoom, because embarrassment doesn't need special effects. It exists all on its own. Now we're in the final stretch, and this is where it hits hardest. This wasn't about one moment. This was about every time someone tried to speak over reason. Every time someone thought if they dominated a room, they dominated the truth. Every time someone underestimated calm. Because calm is dangerous when it's loaded with knowledge. Here's the part that people will study later: the strategic pause, the deliberate choice to let the audience connect the dots themselves. That's mastery, when you don't finish the sentence because you don't have to, because the silence holds the conclusion. Boom! That's when he was finished. Not by an insult, not by a threat, not by a raised voice, by a clean, undeniable, irrefutable reality. And maybe the wildest part of all, he stepped right into it willingly. The unexpected fact that changed everything, he had already been proving wrong by his own statements weeks earlier. All that happened here was the receipt being read out loud. La verdad sale a la luz. And when truth comes to light, it doesn't care who you are, how powerful you think you are, or how loud you speak. Light doesn't negotiate with shadows. It just removes them. So when people say she cooked him, they don't just mean verbally. They mean strategically, legally, logically, calmly, completely. And when they say no way out, they're not exaggerating, because in a cage built of facts, there is no door for lies. He tried to pivot, he tried to smirk, he tried to redirect, but the room was no longer his. The narrative had shifted hands. That's why that freeze frame matters. Not because of mockery, but because you can literally see the second he understood. It was over. That's what finished really looks like. Not by an insult, not by a threat, not by a raised voice. By a clean, undeniable, irrefutable reality. And maybe the wildest part of all, he stepped right into it willingly. The unexpected fact that changed everything, he had already been proven wrong by his own statements weeks earlier. All that happened here was the receipt being read out loud. La verdad sale a la luz. And when truth comes to light, it doesn't care who you are, how powerful you think you are, or how loud you speak. Light doesn't negotiate with shadows. It just removes them. So when people say she cooked him, they don't just mean verbally. They mean strategically, legally, logically, calmly, completely. And when they say no way out, they're not exaggerating, because in a cage built of facts, there is no door for lies. He tried to pivot, he tried to smirk, he tried to redirect, but the room was no longer his. The narrative had shifted hands. That's why that freeze frame matters, not because of mockery, but because you can literally see the second he understood. It was over. That's what finished really looks like. Now let me leave you with this, because this moment isn't just for politics, it's for life. Remember this energy when someone underestimates you. Remember this calm when someone tries to overpower you with volume. Remember this clarity when confusion is used as a weapon. Because logic doesn't need to scream. Truth doesn't need permission. Preparation doesn't need applause. And when you master those things, the noise will always lose. Always.